The world of showbiz has been left stunned by the sudden death of screen legend Sam Neill, just weeks after revealing he was cancer-free.
In the summer of 1988, a relatively unknown 18-year-old Australian actress climbed aboard a fishing trawler off the coast of Queensland to begin work on a claustrophobic psychological thriller called Dead Calm. Across from her stood Sam Neill, already an established leading man in New Zealand and Australian film, cast as her husband in a story that would trap the two of them at sea with a dangerous stranger. Neither of them could have known at the time that the film would become a career-defining moment for the young actress, or that the bond formed during those weeks of filming would last for the rest of their lives. That actress was Nicole Kidman. Nearly 4 decades later, when Sam Neill died at the age of 78, it was that same friendship, one that began on a boat in 1988 and endured through fame, distance, illness, and the ordinary passage of time, that Kidman spoke of first. "Sam was one of the greats, a joy to be around," Kidman said in a statement to the Sydney Morning Herald following the news of Neill's death. "We met when I was just 18, and he took me under his wing, and we stayed friends for life. He was charming, kind, funny, and intelligent." It is a short statement, and a restrained one. There is no dramatic confession in it, no shocking revelation, no breakdown. But read closely. It says something quietly profound about what Neill meant to Kidman, not simply a co-star from early in her career, but a mentor, a protector, and in her own words, a friend for life. Dead Calm, released in 1989, was adapted from Charles Williams' 1963 novel of the same name, and directed by Philip Noyce. The plot is simple and unrelenting. A married couple, John and Ray Ingram, are sailing the open ocean to recover from the recent loss of their young son when they encounter a stranger adrift on a sinking yacht. The stranger, played by a young Billy Zane, claims the rest of his crew died of food poisoning. It soon becomes clear he is lying, and what follows is a tense, isolated battle for survival at sea. Kidman played Ray Ingram, and Neill played her husband John, a naval officer. For a story built almost entirely around 3 characters in confined spaces, the film depended enormously on the chemistry between its leads, and critics and audiences alike responded to what Kidman and Neill built together on screen. The film became a modest but significant success, and it is widely regarded as the project that put Kidman on Hollywood's radar. Within a few years of Dead Calm's release, she was cast opposite Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder, and her international career began in earnest. For Kidman, still a teenager during filming, working alongside an actor as experienced and established as Neill left a lasting impression. By her own account, he did not simply act alongside her. He looked out for her. "He took me under his wing" is a small phrase, but it carries weight from someone who was very young, on a demanding physical shoot, working far from the comforts of a major studio production. It suggests guidance, patience, and a degree of care that a co-star does not owe a colleague, but that a mentor often extends to someone starting out. After Dead Calm, Kidman's and Neill's careers moved in different but equally significant directions. Kidman became one of the most recognizable actresses in the world, earning an Academy Award for The Hours in 2003, and building a body of work that spans studio blockbusters, prestige dramas, and acclaimed television, including her Emmy-winning role in Big Little Lies. Neill, for his part, became one of the defining character actors of his generation, achieving global fame as paleontologist Dr. Alan Grant in Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park in 1993, a role he would reprise decades later in Jurassic World Dominion. He went on to build an equally respected career on television, most notably as the corrupt police chief Chester Campbell in the BBC drama Peaky Blinders. Despite the different trajectories their careers took after Dead Calm, those who knew both actors describe a friendship that persisted quietly in the background of 2 very public lives. It is a familiar pattern in the entertainment industry. Actors who share an intense, formative early project often stay loosely connected for decades, reappearing at award shows, film premieres, or industry tributes, even as their day-to-day lives rarely intersect. What made Kidman and Neill's bond notable, based on her own words, is not that it was loud or visible, but that it was durable. "We stayed friends for life." is not a phrase used lightly by someone reflecting on a 40-year-old professional connection. It is the language of a relationship that outlasted its original context. While Kidman's public statement after Neill's death was brief, it followed several years in which Neill himself had spoken candidly, and at considerable length, about facing his own mortality, a fact that gives new resonance to Kidman's description of him as someone who had made me grateful for every day, in Neill's own words about the people close to him during his illness. In 2023, Neill revealed that he had been diagnosed the previous year with stage 3 angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma, a rare and aggressive form of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He first noticed something was wrong while promoting Jurassic World Dominion in 2022, when he discovered swollen glands that would not go away. The diagnosis that followed was serious enough that Neill began writing about it almost immediately, using the time he spent undergoing chemotherapy to work on what would become his memoir, Did I Ever Tell You This? The book's unflinching opening line, "The thing is, I'm crook, possibly dying, I may have to speed this up," set the tone for a memoir that did not shy away from the reality of his diagnosis, even as Neill insisted the book was not fundamentally about his cancer, but used the illness as what he called a spiral thread, running through a life otherwise defined by decades of acting, friendship, and family. Neill spoke to The Guardian around the memoir's release with characteristic candor about what the experience had taught him. "I can't pretend that the last year hasn't had its dark moments," he said, "but those dark moments throw the light into sharp relief, you know, and have made me grateful for every day and immensely grateful for all my friends." It is not difficult to imagine that gratitude extending to friendships like the one he shared with Kidman, relationships built not on proximity, but on years of accumulated trust. Neill's treatment eventually included chemotherapy, and, after his initial treatment stopped producing results, a clinical trial for CAR T-cell therapy in Australia, an emerging cancer treatment that works by genetically modifying a patient's own immune cells to target cancer more effectively. In April 2026, Neill announced the treatment had worked. Scans showed no detectable cancer remaining in his body. He spoke of the news with evident relief and characteristic humor, calling the result of the treatment science at its best, and even suggested it was time for him to get back in front of the camera again. Sam Neill died on July 13, 2026, in Sydney, surrounded by his loved ones, according to a statement released by his family on his official Instagram account. He was 78 years old. In the days that followed, as tributes poured in from across the film and television industry, Neill's family took the step of clarifying that his death was not connected to the blood cancer he had spent years fighting and had, by his own account, beaten. They emphasized that Neill was still cancer-free at the time of his death, a detail that mattered deeply to a family watching public speculation attempt to connect the two. That distinction matters for understanding the shape of the tributes that followed, including Kidman's. Neill did not die mid-battle with the illness he had written and spoken about so openly. He died having faced it, documented it, and, according to his family, overcome it. The grief expressed by his colleagues and friends was not for a man lost to the disease he had fought, but for the sudden loss of someone who had, in his own telling, been given more time. It is worth being precise about what Nicole Kidman actually said, because the reality is more understated and, in its own way, more affecting than any invented drama could be. She did not deliver a tearful on-camera confession. She did not reveal a shocking truth. She issued a brief, dignified statement to a newspaper, as is customary when a public figure loses someone they have known for decades, expressing that she was immensely saddened by the news and offering a short, warm recollection of how they met and what he meant to her. There is something worth noting in the restraint of that statement. Kidman is one of the most scrutinized actresses in the world, someone whose public image has been shaped and reshaped across nearly 4 decades in the spotlight. In moments of genuine loss, her public response was not theatrical. It was simple, a description of a young woman being taken under the wing of an older, more experienced actor, and a friendship that neither career success nor the passage of 40 years diminished. Kidman's was one voice among many. Cillian Murphy, who worked alongside Neill for the first 2 seasons of Peaky Blinders, released a statement to Variety describing Neill as someone he admired and adored in equal measure, calling him one of the kindest, funniest, and gentlest people, and one of the finest actors he had known. Toni Collette, Neill's Jurassic Park co-star, shared a photograph of him on social media, writing that she loved him and calling him hero, legend, and our great friend. Richard E. Grant, who had known Neill for 3 decades before finally working alongside him on the 2019 film Palm Beach, described him as an officer and a gentleman in the truest sense, crediting Neill with helping him through what he called a very difficult time in his own life. Jurassic World Dominion director Colin Trevorrow called Neill a deeply soulful and beautiful man, recalling his tranquility, his love of wine, and the calm assuredness he brought to his characters. Jeff Goldblum, Neill's co-star across multiple Jurassic Park films, shared a still image from the franchise with a brief, heartfelt farewell. Even New Zealand's Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, marked Neill's death publicly, noting that the actor had helped build his home country's film industry into what it is today, one of our greatest cultural exports. Having started his career when New Zealand barely had a film industry to speak of. Taken together, these tributes paint a consistent picture of a man widely regarded not simply as a gifted performer, but as an unusually generous colleague and friend, someone who, across 5 decades in the industry, seems to have left almost everyone he worked with a genuinely positive impression. Sam Neill's career spanned more than 50 years and crossed continents, genres, and mediums. Born in Northern Ireland and raised in New Zealand, he first drew international attention with films like My Brilliant Career alongside Judy Davis in 1979, before establishing himself as one of New Zealand and Australia's most bankable leading men through the 1980s. Dead Calm with Kidman was very much part of that period, released the same year he appeared in Evil Angels alongside Meryl Streep. His role as Dr. Alan Grant in Jurassic Park in 1993 made him a household name well beyond the film industries of Australasia, introducing him to a global audience of moviegoers who would follow the franchise across 3 decades and multiple sequels. Neill returned to the role in Jurassic World Dominion in 2022, working once again alongside longtime collaborators Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum, a reunion that critics and fans alike received warmly, in part because of the evident, genuine camaraderie between the 3 actors, built over 30 years of an on-and-off working relationship. Television gave Neill a second creative life later in his career. His performance as the menacing, ideologically rigid police inspector Chester Campbell in Peaky Blinders introduced him to a new generation of viewers and earned him praise for a role the show's own production team, on its official social media account following his death, described as despicable, petty, manipulative, but also charismatic, vulnerable, funny, and supremely entertaining to watch, a performance the show credited with helping propel the series in its earliest seasons. Even while undergoing cancer treatment, Neill continued to work and continued to write. His memoir, published in 2023, was praised for its candor and its dry, self-deprecating humor, even in discussing the possibility of his own death, a tone entirely consistent with the man his friends and colleagues described in their tributes. There is a temptation, in covering the death of a beloved public figure, to reach for drama that isn't there: invented breakdowns, imagined confessions, dialogue no one actually said. The truth here needs none of that. A teenage actress meets an older, kinder co-star on a small boat off the coast of Australia. He looks out for her. Their careers diverge, one toward Hollywood's brightest spotlight, the other toward a quieter but no less respected kind of stardom. Decades pass. He faces a serious illness with clear eyes and dark humor, beats it, and then dies suddenly, not from the disease he fought but simply from the passage of time and chance. And when he is gone, the people who knew him, Kidman among them, do not need to perform grief for it to be real. Sam was one of the greats, a joy to be around, Kidman said. He was charming, kind, funny, and intelligent. He will be greatly missed, and my heart goes out to his family. 40 years after they first stood on the deck of a boat together, pretending to be a married couple in mortal danger. That simple, unadorned sentence may be the truest thing anyone said about Sam Neill in the days after his death. Not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't.